Welcome friends to Blossom Hill, where we typically discuss gardening tips to help you have a more successful growing season. Today, however, I'm responding to my colleague urban farmer Curtis Stone and his challenge to open up about recent events. First, I'd like to thank Curtis for being willing to share his perspective and ask for others to comment. It really, helped me take sort of a leap of faith in thinking about the value my comments could have in the gardening community and acknowledging my responsibility and commitment to being a positive, purpose-driven content provider. So first, let me show you how his video began in part.
I want to share with you guys some things that I've been thinking about that really crystallized for me last night, and I'm just kind of feeling really inspired, and I want to share this with people to put it out, put some seeds into the collective consciousness and see what percolates, see what germinates, see what grows, and go from there.
So throughout his video, he discusses 5 categories of concern: politics, economics, legal, agriculture, and medicine. And I'm only going to speak to a couple of those areas today, but I've included a link to his video in the description, and you're certainly welcome to look at it. As Curtis did, I'm interested in knowing what you think, and encourage you to organize your thoughts during this chaotic time as well. I'm limiting my scope because the reason for my video is pretty obvious. An American, George Floyd, was slain by police in Minneapolis while handcuffed on May 25th. And I, like many Americans, I didn't see or hear about it right away, but I did end up seeing a video of the events later on. And while I don't recommend watching something so gruesome, I can tell you without a shadow of doubt that what happened to Mr. Floyd should not happen to anyone anywhere. And while I have the ultimate respect for members of law enforcement that I've personally known and had great relationships with, the circumstances of Floyd's death are occurring far, far too rapidly. And it's totally unacceptable. So Black Lives Matter, and to find those that disagree or have concerns about that, it's so disappointing. Speaking about the failures in our current economic system for working class people, African Americans particularly, civil rights activist and author Cornel West hits the nail on the head in this recent interview he did with CNN.
Its capitalist economy could not generate and deliver in such a way that people could live lives of decency. The nation state, its criminal justice system, its legal system could not generate protection of rights and liberties. And now our culture, of course, is so market driven, everybody for sale, everything for sale. It can't deliver the kind of really real nourishment for soul, for meaning, for purpose. So that when you talk about the masses of black people, the precious poor and working class black people, poor and working class brown, red, yellow, whatever color, they're the ones who are left out, and they feel so thoroughly powerless, helpless, hopeless. Then you get rebellion. And I thank God that we have people in the streets. Can you imagine this kind of lynching taking place, and people are indifferent? People don't care? And the only response we have is Samuel Beckett, my brother. Try again, fail better. Try.
And so when I hear Wes say, try again, fail better, it reminds me of a lot of the perseverance, quotes that, I heard growing up. And a lot of times you hear them, related to sports or about just, the importance, for example, of practice, or, if I don't win or lose, I win or learn. Or even Muhammad Ali's quote, you don't lose if you get knocked down, you lose if you stay down. And this resiliency is critical if we're going to move forward and make our country a better, safer place for all. I know I'm not going to just simply allow things to continue as they are and accept the status quo as inevitable, because it's absolutely not. But beyond the obvious of just not being racist personally or associating with those that are, what else should we try and do and accomplish? Firstly, for me, I realize that it's insufficient to be, not racist, but instead I need to be actively anti-racist. And, how that materializes, I'm not sure, but I think that it's a significant shift in mindset that I hope, everyone thinks about, especially if they were, kind of felt sort of in that neutral idea of just trying to sort of be out of the fray, and take care of sort of take care of business. Next, to reform our political and economic systems, we need to realize that we can't do it with only a third of the population voting. In 2016, 125 million Americans voted. The population at that time, however, was 323 million. That's under 40%. Obviously, children are included in that population number, as well as non-citizen residents, but still, well over 100 million Americans who could have voted didn't. And non-presidential election years are even worse. And that's troubling, as your local elections are the ones that will impact your life the most. Who is your mayor? Who is your sheriff? District attorneys are typically elected in the U.S. Does yours have a history of thoroughly investigating police brutality complaints? Unfortunately, if you think about it, police are the most important evidence gatherers for prosecutors. And so it's no wonder why so few cops face stiff legal jeopardy. It's a huge conflict of interest. I'm not sure if this is happening anywhere, and if it is, I'd love for you to mention it in the comments. But, I think investigations of law enforcement should occur by DAs from out of the immediate area. So, for example, I'm in California, and it would seem, much better if, for example, LA DAs were investigating, complaints from cops in San Francisco, and vice versa. And, and if that's too far, then maybe San Diego and LA, for example. But by this way, you lower the likelihood of a DA having to investigate someone who might be dearly important to a future case 6 months down the road. So when Curtis discussed agriculture in his video, he talked about the importance of moving from a destructive agricultural system to a constructive system. And it resonated a lot with me with West's point about basically failing forward. So let's listen briefly.
We need to move from more of a destructive system to a constructive system. And if you look at the conventional agriculture system, the system that produces the vast majority of food in this world that's making us sick, is very far removed from nature, because in the conventional agriculture system, it's about man against nature. Whereas I believe we need to move to something that man is nature, thus man works with nature. And in the monoculture system, nature doesn't like monoculture. Monocultures do not exist in nature anywhere. And agriculture needs to move from the monoculture to the regenerative, needs to get away from fighting nature to becoming with nature and using the aspects of nature, the abundance of nature that exponentially increases and creates so much for us to share, that we do not need to live in a world of scarcity. We do not need to live in a world where people are starving.
So when I hear Curtis talking about the abundance of nature and creating a sustainable agricultural system that can provide for all, it reminds me of the purpose of my channel, basically to bring growing to asphalt environments like big cities, to turn food deserts into neighborhood gardens. And I think by teaching others how to grow, we help increase prosperity and social equity in our communities. So finally, to members of the farming community, providing food to others, especially considering the additional risk you're taking during the pandemic, and especially to those experiencing racism and other forms of bigotry, I just want to thank you dearly, and acknowledge your contribution to America. So thanks for your time, and take care of yourself.